How often do you think about trees? How often do you look at them and think about them? You ever thought about the value that comes from trees? How much we get from them? We get shade, we get shelter. You know what's amazing about trees is even if they never are used for any other purpose, they have value in themselves. Because these trees are here, we can breathe. That's a pretty good gift by itself. You know, I was thinking about a passage I read the other day, Jesus healing a blind man. In that story, the guy says, I see men like trees walking around. So it got me thinking about trees and how often I pay attention to them. And most of the time I just go through life going right by them. And the Lord reminded me sometimes we do that with people. They're walking by us all the time, hurting, broken, in need. There's all kinds of people in the world. Some are tall, some are short, some are big, some are small, some are young, some are old. And no matter what a person does in their life, no matter what they're destined to do or what they're called to do, because they're here, because they are created in the image of God, they have value. See, I don't know what kind of tree you'll be in the world or what kind of person you're going to be in the world. I don't know if you're going to be like a tree that provides shade or shelter. Maybe you build houses. Maybe you're a homemaker. You're good for food or medicine. Maybe you'll be a doctor or a cook. Maybe you'll provide protection, like a policeman or a firefighter. Maybe like a tree that produces paper or pencils, you'll be a communicator, maybe a writer. But whatever kind of tree or whatever kind of person you end up being in this world, just remember you start off with great value because you're here. These trees are falling on me. There's literally hundreds of different kinds of trees in the world. But here's a key point. Just like trees, you know, your value is not based on what you do in life. Your value is not based on how famous you are, how rich you are, how much you produce, how much you do. You start off with inherent value because you're created by God. So thinking about all these different trees and the value that they bring to the world, I also want to talk about the potential of a tree. Like a tree that has a potential to grow as a mighty oak. I remember one time somebody told me the mightiest oak was just one crazy nut who held its ground. But think about the potential of an oak tree. It starts with such a small thing like an acorn. But given enough time, given enough water and sun and nutrients from the ground, it grows into one of these huge oak trees that I'm surrounded by. This idea of people as trees reminds me of a story in the Gospel of Mark. Now the story is about Jesus healing a blind man. The story is not about trees, but there's a phrase in there that I think is unusual. So Jesus touches this man who's blind and asks him, do you see anything? And he said, I see men as trees walking around. Now clearly before he was completely blind, so this is an improvement. But what does it mean to see men as trees? And so I got to thinking about how often do we look at trees? How often do we think about them when we're driving down the road? We pass hundreds of them, we pass thousands of them every day and never even take thought for them. Imagine how much potential is in each tree that we go by. Whether it's food or whether it's medicine or whether it's shade or lumber for housing or even paper and pencils. Trees are an amazing thing, just like people. How many people did you pass today? How many people do you drive by every day and take no thought for? No, that man had an issue with his sight. But then Jesus does this, he touches him again. And then the text says, he saw all men clearly. Now this passage is not about trees. This passage is not about men as trees, but I think it's interesting. When Jesus was done his work on this guy, he's finished the miracle, and this man began to notice and see every man or every person clearly. Maybe that's what God wants to do with us. Maybe he wants us to see people as he sees them. Maybe he wants us to see the inherent value that every person on earth has, no matter how much I like them or dislike them. But God also wants us to see the potential of every person. Imagine the tree that's used for building a ship. Imagine the Mayflower that brought the people over to the New World. Imagine a tree that was used to produce the paper the Declaration of Independence was written on. Imagine the trees that produced the pencils that all the great writers of history have used to write novels and stories. Imagine the Ark of the Covenant that held the commandments and the tablets of God. Yeah, the value is in a tree, and the value in a person is inherently there. But just like every tree has the potential to be something bigger or better, every person has the potential to make an impact in the world. I want to challenge you today to look around at the people or the trees in your life. And I think you'll notice something about the great trees in your life. They're not the biggest, they're not the strongest, they're not the prettiest. They're usually the ones who've learned the greatest potential and they're serving others. So I want to challenge you today. Slow down and really look at the trees in your life. Really notice the people that God's put around you. Start to comment and to focus on the value that they have and the potential that you see in them. And let others do the same for you. And ask God to give you eyes to see them as God sees them.